This is the Good Government Podcast with Aaron Slutkin and Michael Hoffpauir.
I used to have a teacher who used to always say, it's good to laugh. It's great advice. It is good. You should welcome it. You don't have to study Plato to know that playfulness has a rightful place in seriousness or in studies or in education. Speaking of important things, you know I'm a huge fan of LaCroix. I think Pamplemousse LaCroix is great. You should drink as many of those as you can, as often as you can. And yet lately it's come to my attention that we should be drinking some minerals. I should hazard the local tap water or invest in this crazy stuff, Topo Chico, which is not inexpensive, because you should have some minerals running through your body, not just whatever this refined, who knows what's it, that's delicious LaCroix. So every time when I see you get up and go, just put Maryland tap water in your thermos, I'm really wondering what it's doing for your constitution.
Our friend Shane told me that his buddy, who's a plumber, will not ever drink tap water. And now this is gospel for him. So he has a Brita filter in his fridge. But accessible water, it's a nice thing.
I like it. Yeah, it's pretty nice, pretty good stuff. The whole indoor plumbing thing, man, it's great.
You can get a mineral mix.
Oh,
like an electrolyte powder, something like that you pour into your water.
Funny to think, well, so what I should do is purify my water and then add back in.
Yes, and then add stuff to it.
Yeah. And so no matter where this plumber was, his knowledge of what? Not merely of pipes, but of treatment facilities?
I think it was mostly pipes, that all our pipes are just filthy.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
I do too. I mean, I don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah, but we're all Nietzscheans, aren't we? Whatever doesn't kill us. I'm not so sure that that's what he meant.
Maybe not.
Well, speaking of our concern with not dying, Federalist Paper number 3 is about safety. In fact, I would like to suggest to you we treat Federalist Papers 3, 4, and 5 as a unit. And 3, 4, and 5 are on safety, the necessity of the Union to protect against foreign threats. That's the theme here. We need the Union to keep us safe from foreign threats. And as we turn to Federalist 3, Publius argues everybody has had the opinion for some time that union is the genuine interest of the people. So I think there's a funny question at the beginning of 3. If everybody understands and persists in the opinion that union is essential to safety and is good, why is it now a new question? Why are we worried about this now? And if you look at the very end of the first paragraph of Federalist Paper number 3, you see Publius is arguing not merely for union. He is arguing for the following. I'm just going to quote the tail end of the sentence. Continuing firmly united under one federal government, vested with sufficient powers for all general and national purposes. What I would like to suggest regarding Federalist Paper number 3 is the following. Is union under a weak federal government, under the Articles of Confederation, really union in the sense that we need it? The answer is no. Publius will describe it in Federalist Paper number 3, the union under the Articles of Confederation and the Articles of Confederation themselves, feeble. He's going to say it is a feeble government. So what we need then is a sufficient or efficient national government, he will say twice in Federalist Paper number 3. We're going to need an efficient national government for the following reason. Union is essential for safety. Efficient government is needed for union. That's the argument that one ought to pay attention to throughout Federalist 3. Not union alone, union under a particular sort of government. One that is capable of securing us and keeping us safe.
Can I ask you, what do you make of the fact that Publius says that Americans wish to continue firmly united under one federal government, vested with sufficient powers for all general and national purposes? Going back to Fed 1, we have unequivocally experienced the inefficiency of the Articles. Now we learn that they're feeble. yet we remain under an efficient government?
Well, it's not that we remain under an efficient government. It's that we remain of the opinion that union is good.
I see.
And we've seen intimations from Federalist Paper 1 into Federalist Paper 2. They become much louder than mere intimations that there are some people out there who actually are against union. Those people who have local interests that they feel will be met better if local government can be strongest. And if local government is strongest in the states, that is, then the union is necessarily a confederacy, at best existing under a feeble, quote, national government. Publius is relying on the opinion that's been around since the union came into being, thanks to Ben Franklin, in no small part, to say, look, you all love union. We have a great respect and high opinion, wrought by time. So here Publius is even doing something a little undemocratic. The old is the good, even if it's only a decade plus years old. And guess what? That was your opinion then, so it should be your opinion now. So persist in it. What you need to shift is your understanding of what sort of government is capable of maintaining that thing that you like, the union.
And so these papers, now that we're going to talk about maintaining the union, 3, 4, and 5, are about war. A strong national government is essential for securing the union because it will be better not only at avoiding war with other powers, but at prosecuting war once the rubber hits the road. Why start with safety, especially after Federalist 2, when we get to travel the American land and really ride the high rhetoric of that essay? Now we're down to something that maybe is a little lower, safety. Well, having discussed the land in Federalist 2, now we're going to secure it. Safety, being able to resist our enemies, is really the first step in any political community, because whatever your political community is set up for, and here we're talking about allowing people to pursue happiness, encouraging ownership of property and pursuit of property, you cannot have it without external security. If you want to be a farmer or a publisher or a printer or a writer or a politician, you need to know that King George isn't going to come knocking on your door. And furthermore, in paragraph 3, Publius says that among the many objects to which a wise and free people find it necessary to direct their attention, that of providing for their safety seems to be the first. So it's not just that any people need security, and it's true, any people need security, but in particular, a free people need security. This is an author who experienced the Revolution, who experienced Parliament and King George attempting to make policy for the colonies. Well, a free people is one that can make its own laws. That can only be accomplished once you're able to expel the invader.
That's right. That's a great argument. And I would add to it, no matter if we've come down from the soaring rhetoric of Federalist 2, we still have Publius is still doing some work here. Great respect, high opinion. The people are not merely free, they are also wise, as you just pointed out, Aaron. So there still is something here at work, rhetorically speaking. Anytime I see Publius saying that a wise and free people behaves this way or should have this opinion, what he wants the reader to think and how he wants the reader to react is as follows. Well, I'm a wise person. I'm a free person, or I want to be a free person. So all of these are a sort of ennobling call. It's a wonderful rhetorical trick, because imagine if he said a foolish and slavish people and what that would elicit from you. And just to be clear and restate, Publius is also saying without a sufficient or efficient or good government, you're not going to be safe. Union under the feeble government, that is the Articles of Confederation, is insufficient for keeping you safe. Safety is such a big subject. It's an infinite subject. It's an occupation of even the noblest of minds, perhaps.
And we start with trying to avoid war. Safety can be accomplished by pursuing war or by avoiding war. You might pursue war to defeat an enemy that is making you feel envious or that is breaking a treaty with you. But Publius doesn't think that America should pursue an expansionist policy. He doesn't argue that united America will be more likely to defeat its enemies, and therefore we ought to go to war more often. We're talking about avoiding war. This is not a civilization that is going to pursue war as a means of glory or as a means of instilling virtue. This is a more pacific society.
Even if that were not the case, it truly or genuinely the case, rhetorically, it would be disaster to get aggressive in any way at this point. No, this is simply united, we are strong. The real hard-nosed lesson here is that people are going to make war against you for real or pretend causes. There can be just causes of war, and then as we see, there will be unjust causes of war. But the point here is be realistic. War is going to happen. To use the language from that fun movie In the Loop, a wonderful political movie if you haven't seen it, war is inevitable. You must build dikes and dams, to continue to quote that realist Machiavelli. And so here we're doing so through union. The just causes of war, for the most part, arise either from violations of treaties or direct violence. So once we realize that the violation of treaties is a cause of just war, let's make that less likely to happen by way of consolidation. This is the argument we see throughout paragraph 9, especially the closing sentence there. The wisdom of the convention in committing such questions to the jurisdiction and judgment of courts appointed by law and responsible only to one national government cannot be too much commended. So instead of just having all of these different parties who are going to be dealing with their own treaties and their own problems, trying to push it up to the top seems to be a way of lessening the possibility of just causes of war from violations of treaties. And the same is going to go on for direct violence as well. It's a remarkable argument. Publius will argue the cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
Publius is going to argue the cream rises to the top in terms of the quality of the people who fill the offices. Boy, that's a real challenge for us to understand. That then in addition, in terms of the sort of adjudication that's going to occur, it's interesting to think that one national government has what some today would consider a defect, namely that it's big and removed and slow, something that even the anti-feds are going to be very worried about. But we should also see that possibly from Publius's point of view, not as a defect, but as a feature, an admirable quality. Because as removed and big and far away, the thing should be cooler. The government should be cooler. It shouldn't be directly invested in these problems that states are going through so as to run hot, be filled with pride, but also so it should be, as we see towards the end of the paper, temperate and cool. So no matter how much Publius actually flatters the people in the beginning of 3, he starts talking about their own pride. So some of the just causes of war can certainly be violating treaties, but we also know that our pride can get us in a lot of trouble. And Publius here is suggesting that an efficient national government is going to be less likely to operate according to such human things.
Yeah, it's not simply a mathematical equation that 13 states are more likely to give offense than one, but really that it's a commentary on what he expects to be the character of the national government. More general and extensive reputation for talents and other qualifications will be necessary to recommend men to offices under the national government. It will result that the administration, the political councils, and the judicial decisions of the national government will be more wise, systemic, and judicious than those of individual states. So there will be a kind of brain drain toward D.C. Well, that's speaking a little bit ahead. We don't know where the federal capital is going to be yet.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a brain drain toward, I think, New York City is the first federal capital. The best men, the wisest, are going to leave their states and serve for a time or for life in the national government. But it's not just that these are men of better quality who we'll see later are going to refine and enlarge the public view. We see that different local laws and interests may affect and influence the men of the states, but the national government, not being affected by those local circumstances, will neither be induced to commit the wrong themselves, meaning that the national government won't develop a peculiar interest. It will represent the interest of the whole. I wonder about that. I wonder if Publius is taking seriously the problem of faction. I wonder if Publius is taking seriously that the national government may develop its own interest, the interest of the national government, as opposed to the interest of the whole. I'm thinking here about something like what we see from bureaucratic agency that will pursue its own good rather than pursue the interest of the national government, of the states. And lastly, Publius also says, and here we're talking about your pride. We're talking about what you mentioned as the pride of the states. He says the national government will not be affected by this pride, but will proceed with moderation and candor. Would that it were so.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, as I was thinking through what you were just advancing, you would say, well, isn't it always in the national government's interest to keep the nation safe? Because it is the nation, no matter if it's South Carolina or New York. But you can think of some contemporary examples to challenge that understanding of what constitutes safety in America. So it's very interesting, the challenges you raise. So let me at least advance something that I think Publius is arguing that fits with what you're saying. A government of one whole union is less likely to commit injustices than are a series of states. I mean, that's what you just read towards the end of paragraph 16. And I would add also, this government has to have the power to tax. That's a really big deal of keeping from committing injustices, for instance, and to pay back seized property. But we have to see here that justice and safety go together. A big whole union under one efficient government is less likely to commit injustices than our states. That is to say, this government is more likely to be just. Not in some positive, proactive sense, but just by way of not committing injustice. And therefore, justice and safety go together, especially if you add a power to tax. We've got these debts to these people we need to pay back, get these British troops out of here. And so this is, again, how it is that union and safety are not the whole equation. It also has to have a national government that is efficient. And this is the argument here. So finally, a word of caution. It's sometimes unavoidable in politics. Sometimes you have to commit injustices. So let's just work with that as a hypothesis. Maybe there's a time when the government has to be unjust. I can't afford to pay this back. I've actually got to take this thing from these people, or something along these lines. If it's possible that it is unavoidable and one must commit injustices from time to time, is it not better then to be in a union because you're stronger? I mean, if you're going to be real politique about Fed paper number 3 and 4 and 5, why not say, well, sometimes we might be the bad guy. And if we're the bad guy, shouldn't we have some good armor? Not simply because we're the good guy, but also because we're the bad guy. You need the power to avoid deserved punishment and undeserved punishment. So vote yes for the United States Constitution, I think, is Publius's argument.
And here we think of the paramount importance of safety. As an individual, I might hesitate to commit injustice. I don't want to have injustice committed to me, but I may be more willing to have injustice committed onto me than to commit it myself. As a state, as a member of a state, I'm not sure I apply the same logic.
Yeah.
And then let's realize that a national government, a strong government, and Publius is going to talk in number 4 about how a national union is going to be able to secure safety because it will be more able to direct its arms. A stronger government is a government that's more likely to commit injustice.
That's right. So let's go straight into 4, because I worry that you didn't like what I just said about 3. I worry that it turned you off and that you were looking at this and saying, well, wait a minute. If you're saying that strong union is desirable because some days you might actually have to commit injustice, it seems to me that you can move into that argument a little more easily by way of Fed 4. Even if you are just, Federalist paper number 4 allows us to see, even if you are just, you will be attacked because of pretend causes. Big bad monarchs appear all through the beginning of Federalist paper number 4, and it doesn't matter because you're also going to get involved in economic problems. It moves from the thirst for military glory, revenge for personal affronts, ambition or private compacts to aggrandize or support their particular families or partisans. That's said in the third paragraph of Federalist Paper number 4 as to why it is that absolute monarchs will make war on you. And then after that, we go into just talking about, look, we're rivals with France and Britain in the fisheries. So it's you got these monarchs who are out here for military glory, and then you've just got these Frenchmen and these Brits who just want some fish. So high or low, it's ingrained in human nature. Back to that safety is first. Well, another aspect of safety is also the economy. So this concern of safety is not simply due to the fallen nature of man or the evil ways of absolute monarchs. It seems sewn into our condition as human beings who are also facing economic necessity. As you follow Fed 4, it's economic. So therefore, even if you're just, you will be attacked because of pretend causes. And sometimes those pretend causes might even be yours, because you're engaged in some tariff battle or something over some fisheries or something like this. So you must fend off these attacks with the best possible defense that you can have. Union.
And within this paper, he seems to almost be encouraging the United States to get into a position where we may invite war. Jealousies and weaknesses may gradually slide into the minds and cabinets of other nations. And the time may come when the fleets of America may engage attention. And well, they should. There seems to be inspiring envy and fear among our enemies. I mean, this is I'm not sure I want to call it a dark paper. At the same time, certainly it's concerned with fear and war and security. I mean, certainly is a counterbalance to the notion that this republic, this commercial republic, would be able to avoid hostilities.
We're coming down from all of that security that we had in Fed 2, of being surrounded by this water and far away from all these people. You know, it's being corrected so quickly by Publius here. Now, all of a sudden, these internal waterways are a bit of a problem. We can be blocked off from access to them by foreign actors. You realize all of the safety and thrice blessings of Federalist Paper number 2, actually, we have work to do if we want to live. Fed 3, 4, and 5. And I would add also, in addition to what you just said, Aaron, this dark line that you said, a dark paper, we have in this penultimate paragraph in Federalist 3, a strong and united nation. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of it, powerful nation. And this is language that I think you've helped me see here in Federalist 4. Effectual government. Now we move away from just government, sufficient government, efficient government, to Fed 4, good government, a high standard, back from Federalist Paper number 1. And as we round out Federalist Paper number 4, effectual government. And I dare you to tell me that that doesn't make you think of a thinker who's very much concerned with an effectual thing in the 15th chapter of his little book. And here it is, his government is effectual, is perfectly at home, in my opinion, with Publius's political science. If I may admit, I know what is going to happen in the remainder of these papers. Namely, government must have power. It must have energy proportionate to its ends. And if our job or goal or end is at least to keep you safe, we must have the power, the energy sufficient to meet that end. And that's what we're going to call effectual government. That which is capable of effecting and bringing about its end. And the first way that Publius wants us to grow up and come to accept this, we lovers of the Articles of Confederation, is seeing we need a stronger federal government if we are to have union, because we need union in order to have safety. It's a remarkable sort of slapping of the wrists. So it's a dark paper, you say, Aaron. I say it's a lesson. It's a hard lesson that perhaps we don't want to learn about human beings and ourselves as human beings.
And can I add, when we're talking about safety, we noted that Fed 3 begins with a concern over safety. But in the last line in my edition, I see the word humiliation. So we need a strong government, yes, to be able to provide security but we're also concerned with national pride, with not being the laughing stock of Europe. And I suppose the kind of pride that a good nation, a good government attains to it is something higher than safety.
Yeah, it's funny. So rhetorically, what can you do with this? I mean, at the end of Federalist 4, Publius is speaking about, as you just said, how it is that we would appear to other nations if we were to break up into a series of discordant republics or confederacies, one inclining to Britain, another to France, a third to Spain, and perhaps played off against each other by the three. What a poor, pitiful figure will America make in their eyes? Just as much as I was suggesting earlier that when he says wise and free people is a call, well, I'm wise and I'm free, or I want to be wise and I want to be free. Here, I think we can see the other side of the blade. Do you want to be poor and pitiful? And if the answer is no, I don't want to be a poor, pitiful figure in the eyes of these countries, one of which was our compatriot in this war, the other which was our enemy in it most recently, well, then that means you need to vote for this Constitution. I'm just trying to remind us of the rhetorical component that's necessary for the education here. It's not just a recipe in terms of the institutions created by the Constitution. It is that, but we also have the rhetorical component of it here as well. So America and Americans must think of themselves as a whole, W-H-O-L-E, made up of parts. That's the big shift that has to happen. That's the education we have to undergo. Again, I've asked this question in our conversations before. Are we a nation? Are we to be a nation is a genuine question at the time of the founding, and it's one that we should never take for granted. Are we a people? Do you have to be a people in order to be a nation, or a nation in order to be a people? And as I said last time, as I heard Ralph Lerner say once, sometimes how you get somewhere is to suppose it already exists. That's the language that I used when we discussed Fed 2. Now here by Fed 4, as we're moving into Fed 5, what we are showing is that it is in your material interest and your deepest desires to be safe, and therefore perhaps be happy if you can do well afterwards and the choices you make in your life and so forth. Well, then in that case, you need to picture yourself as an American and America herself as a whole nation. Union is the word. Finally, you can see this come to a head in Fed 5. If we suffer disunion, states that are bordering other nations and hostile entities will be driven by envy and fear. Armies will line their borders. Everything will become less safe, more martial or militant or on edge, powder keg. And then each state will come, I think, to fear each other. And the reason why they will fear each other, the reason why North and South Carolina, et cetera, are going to fear each other is because of proximity. Proximity breeds fear in this situation. They're not going to fear Britain because it's not as immediate as Virginia. Publius predicts even a northern entity and a southern entity. And then it's just going to be two powers that are going to recreate everything we've seen in Europe. So, and then just to hit the original theme of this, you're not going to be safe. You have to have union, but I'm arguing union alone is not sufficient. You need a sufficient government, a government that may maintain through its efficiency, its effectualness, its good governance, the union itself. So it's not just union alone. Government has to be able to deal with its treaties and not give foreign nations just cause for doing war. So let's start to wrap this up if we can. Maybe the thing to ask after reading Federalist Papers 3, 4, and 5 is what sort of policy, international relations policy we might call it today, do you see issuing from Federalist 3, 4, and 5? Publius has shown us war is going to happen. But at the same time, he's shown us, look, if you build a government that's efficient and a union, you can at least cut down on some of the war that you might otherwise suffer. Namely, because if you're strong enough to collect taxes and also cool enough when it comes to deciding matters of foreign policy, you can limit the number of just causes for people to make war with you. So he's not just merely militant realist. On the other hand, he's not just pie in the sky idealist, because we also learn people will make war with you for pretend causes, no matter if it's an absolute monarch or somebody who's trying to fish in the same waters you're trying to fish in. So he's shown us all this hard-nosed stuff. He's shown us some idealist stuff regarding justice. And at the end of the day, he's splitting the difference, and we come away as a thoroughgoing recipient of Publius's political science, I would argue. That's not quite modern and not quite pie in the sky, but it sure does admit a place for justice and injustice in human beings' life, in the construction of government, and finally, most importantly, in our understanding of good government. This good government can deal with injustice that others do to it, and I've argued injustice it might have to do. And it can be just much more readily than that feeble Articles of Confederation. It's a wonderful argument. And it's funny to say it's a wonderful argument because it's really scary stuff. Yeah. It's really scary stuff. But I tell you what, you're being called upon to deliberate. How much is this? Let's go back. Can we do that as well, Aaron? Let's think about accident, necessity, force, all of that stuff that's going on, and realize here we see Publius now deliberating and choosing and calling others to deliberate and choose about those things, accident, force, that are so much still a part of our lives. We cannot escape that stuff. As I think I've said before, this doesn't occur in a seminar room. So now what we're doing is deliberating about those accidents and that role of force and that human nature that we can't quite change. Yeah. But by understanding it and accounting for it to the best of our ability, we can safeguard against it.
Yeah, this lends to our argument in episode 2 that you cannot get rid of accident and force. Now you can reflect on accident and force, and you can choose how you can avoid being the victim of accident and force, like you said, build dikes and dams. But it's part of human life.
Publius is also going to run down or depreciate alliances and leagues. And we should see that critique is a critique of the Confederacy and any federal system that relies on faith alone. Faith is another theme we could have picked up here and seen that that's not sufficient for our safety or possible prosperity. We must have union and this firm sense of America as a whole united nation, not a series of localized interests that are never commensurate with other localized interests. There's the truth that's starting to bleed through the pages here, namely that in politics, proximity creates enemies, nations' enemies at least. On the other hand, that's not the case with friendship. Proximity is essential for friendship. You don't have to read Aristotle to have some sense of that, but you'll find those arguments there. And so it's real interesting in seeing the way that he's having his cake and eating it too. Proximity in politics creates enemies, but not if you're of the same family. Yeah. Not if you're of the same people, of the same nation. And that's why I'm using the word family here on purpose. So, we need the proximity that doesn't even look like proximity anymore as we think of ourselves as a whole, of which we are just constitutive parts. Because if we're not that whole, that same proximity that we're going to use to unite us will actually breed our enmity. It's really an interesting paradox, I think.
And what a great tragedy if this American family that we saw on Fed 2 was divided.
That imagined family, like many families, it's got its fictions about it,
Like you said, if you build it, they'll come. One way to make something real is to imagine it exists.
Well, and that presages where we're going to go with 6, 7, and 8. So that's interesting. Right now, we've teed up for 6, 7, and 8, and the turn really to worrying about internal stuff. All of this was about external, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to go internal wars with Fed 6. Aaron, as usual, great to see you. How was the wedding, by the way? We didn't talk about it. Good cake?
I did not have the cake.
Oh my God.
I did not have the cake.
I
had a lovely, lovely short rib. I'd never been to Vermont before. This was the wedding of a colleague. I don't think I've been anywhere so beautiful in the United States. In October, the greens and the reds.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. We went and drove up to Middlebury and then drove around the Green Mountain. Another day where I thought, why do I live in Baltimore, Maryland?
Because of the Guinness factory. All right. Good. Hey, great seeing you.
You too, man.
This has been the Good Government Podcast with Aaron Slutkin and Michael Hoffpauir.